Good evening, everyone. Am I audible? So I think we are good to start. Till now, yesterday we have tried to review all the modules related to AWS. Okay, and we try to understand how the different services that can be utilized and be configured over the cloud environment. So we just mostly concentrate on the AWS cloud services. Okay. Any doubts from the previous sessions? Any doubts? Any doubts from the previous sessions? Yesterday we tried to review on database services as well, right? So we have other cloud vendors where along with AWS, which are actually popular. That's Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud, correct? So we're gonna review on the specific aspects of these two cloud environments. We're just trying to have an overview or like kind of an introduction today's class. Okay. Any doubts for the previous sessions?
So I hope everyone is seeing my screen. So we're gonna have an introduction on Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud. Okay. And as we have already reviewed in deep on Microsoft, Amazon AWS and trying to work on the services. And we just try to have a configuration and practice, correct? With the different modules within the cloud. So Microsoft Azure, it's formerly known as Windows Azure. Okay. It's one of the public cloud computing platform and it is trying to provide us broad range of cloud services similar like an AWS as well, like computing services, storage, networking, database, which we can try to use these services to develop and scale new applications to run existing applications in the public cloud environment. Okay, so even it is one of the popular model, and again the Microsoft charges for Azure on pay as you go service. It's similar like in how we try to review like other cloud vendors. That means subscribers will receive a bill each month that only charges for the specific resources and the services they try to use it. Okay. And so once customer subscribes to the Azure, they have access to all the services, including Azure portals. So they can try to use the services to create the cloud-based resources like a server's launch and the database, storage, networking, and all these services can be assembled together to host the workloads and store the data. Okay. Even it has a different pricing structure, unlike AWS, because AWS has a different pricing structure and Azure also have a different pricing structure. Okay. Even it is one of the most popular cloud vendor, and it's mostly popular for its Active Directory. That's one kind of a service where Microsoft is trying to provide. Okay. And other than that, the backend technology, whatever we trying to practice in AWS, the backend technology will be same, and the front end, the GUI and the pricing, and the service names, whatever the services that we try to see in AWS, these will be somewhat different when we try to compare with other vendors. Okay. So we will try to have an overview on how it is going to be. Okay. So Azure offers more global regions than any other cloud providers, with 60 plus regions representing over 140 countries. That means they have a deployment of their data centers into these particular countries. Okay. So regions are made up of one or more data centers in the closest proximity, and it provides the flexibility and scale to reduce the customer latency. Okay. So it just provides, like a similar to AWS, it has a visibility to provide these services across the different parts of the globe with a flexible services and scalable infrastructure. That means they have a better network performance by having a customer, trying to reduce the customer latency. So preserve the data residency with a comprehensive compliance offering. That means in terms of a compliance and the security, it is trying to provide these similar services like AWS as well. So like this Azure, it's like a Google Cloud and Amazon Cloud environment, right? So even it is some similar kind of an environment, but again, it depends on the types of regions and the zones and the physical space they try to occupy, and depending on the type of services with the cost effective solution, how they are trying to provide. It depends on company to company, like which kind of a cloud vendor they will try to choose. Okay, it depends on the service. Some companies might like Azure, some companies might like AWS, some companies might like Google Cloud vendor, depending on the pricing model, depending on the contractual based, and there are various factors as well. Okay. So we have a different cloud vendors, right? Like IBM Cloud, Alibaba Cloud, and Oracle Cloud environment. So apart from these, the popular models currently in the market were Amazon AWS, Microsoft Azure, and the Google Cloud Platform. So Azure, it unveiled the Windows Azure early in the October 2008. Okay, and it just came live on February 2010. And then later in 2014, Microsoft changed its name from Windows Azure to the Microsoft Azure. Okay, so where Azure used to provide a service platform for .NET services, SQL services, and many live services. Okay, so Microsoft Azure from that time, since from 2014, is going bigger and better in the coming days, and they try to have a different locations providing a different kind of a services across all the locations. Okay, so that's how it has been, increasing in terms of performance, in terms of a security, increased collaborations, and the backup and recovery options, and with with the least effort of providing a cost effective and less operational cost. Okay. So you can see, coming to the Azure global infrastructure, we have a different availability zones. As I told you, we have a different availability zones even here as well. So if you see what is availability zone, it's similar like an AWS as well. We have a zone, right? Availability zones are nothing but a unique physical locations. Okay. Zones are nothing but a unique physical locations offering high availability to protect the applications and data from the failures. Okay. So each zone is made up of one or more data centers with a physical infrastructure like a power equipment, cooling equipment, networking, and server equipment. All right. So these availability zones, you can see, provides protection against the downtime due to data center failure. Physically separated data centers within the same region. So what happens if we have a different availability zones within the same region? What happens if there are any issues with one particular data center, like in this particular zone, your data is still backup and durable and available into other availability zones as well. So that's how these are interlinked. Okay. Each data center is equipped with independent power, cooling, and networkings connected through private fiber optic networks. In terms of a security aspects, they have a networking configurations which will try to help us to build up the security concepts. Okay. So we have another option that is nothing but one kind of an aspect called Azure edge zones. Okay. So edge zones are nothing but a footprint extension of Azure placed in densely populated areas. So edge zones are nothing but, for example, uh, there are some locations where there are no possibilities for a data centers to be deployed. Okay. So at that situations, what happened? These edge zones are supported over there. Like they might have a less performance, like latency sensitive and throughput instead to apps close to your end users. So these are a part of Microsoft global network. That means edge zones will be deployed at the borders of the that particular locations. So that what happens, rather we try to having a connection uh, best connection directly coming from the zones, you will have the reliable connection directly from the edge zones. Edge zones will be deployed at the edge of your particular locations. So the zone might be at a different location. So you might be staying and trying to have your infrastructure deployed at your location. So having the infrastructure set up at the edge zones, it will try to provide a higher network speed and a good reliable performance in terms of a bandwidth as well. Okay. So it will be, assuring you to, run your infrastructure with a latency sensitive and throughput intensive app close to your end users, like a websites. Okay. So what happened? These are also the part of global network infrastructure, which offers secure, reliable, and high bandwidth connectivity between the applications. Okay. So this is one kind of a concept. We have an Azure edge zones. So edge zones are like nothing but a similar to a normal zone, but edge zones are nothing but deployed in the nearby nearest locations. This particular infrastructure will be deployed with a high speed networking equipment nearby the edge locations of the customer environment. If you try to see here, region pairs. So this is where the regions are deployed for this Microsoft Azure Cloud Data Center. So at least 300 miles of separation between region pairs. That means to have a different regions that has been deployed, we have at least the difference between 300 miles of separation between each pair. Automatic replications for some services. So the replication can be done within one region to another region. That is one kind of a aspect that has been deployed here. Prioritize region recovery in the event of outage. If there are any issues with one region in terms of that particular data center itself is down, like there is an outage, there will be a prioritized quick backup options, disaster recovery options that Microsoft Azure will be taking care in the background so that the clients and the customers won't be affected. Okay. Updates and rollouts sequentially to minimize the downtime. If there has to be any changes or updates or maintenance patches, if that has to be done, that will be done sequentially for each region to maintain and minimize the outage or any impact to the customers. Okay, these are kind of a features related to the global infrastructure. See, we have a different states like regions, the countries, north, east US, west US, US state, southeast, different parts of the cloud like India, south. You can see this. These are how they are deployed. Uh, Availability options. So these are trying to, it's kind of a picture where it is trying to provide us an availability option in terms of a service level agreement. That means AWS is trying to promise us 99.9% with a VM availability. You can see VM availability. single VM, easier lift and shift. These are kind of an availability. That SLA is nothing but a service level agreement. That means they are trying to give us an assurance of 99.9%, 99.9% of availability and the durability of a data. Okay, this is one kind of a picture that is trying to have that. This is a VM's availability. This is an availability zones availability and the regions. Okay, disaster recovery is a concept. For example, if there is an issue with a one location, if your infrastructure and the data is into this particular location, if there is an outage, your data will be quickly back up to the other region so that you doesn't have any impact for the applications or the infrastructure that you had of with an Azure. So they are trying to promise you with a disaster recovery concepts. Okay, this is nothing but a regional protection. These are kind of an availability options that has been ported by Azure. So before I go to the Active Directory, let's see how this data center it looks like. I'll just try to show you. For example, this is how the data center for Microsoft Azure, how it looks like in a 3D view. You can see this. So inside the data center, so this is kind of a 3D view, how it's, one of the data center, how it looks like. You can see these are nothing but a racks. These are nothing but a physical racks. Inside these racks, you can see there are the servers which has been placed and which are in the rectangular, module. You can see this. This is how it looks like. This is how it looks like, the data center rooms for other data centers as well. But I just want to show you the 3D view, how it looks like. Okay. There are wires, networking devices, access control devices, and these are kind of a high configuration servers that has been placed, which will be managed by a set of professionals, infrastructure professionals and data center admins who is to manage them. Okay. Process. This is a concept of a circular center. So this is again the equipment inside the data center, how it looks like. They just try to provide us a 3D view. This is again the networking room, how it looks like. Data travels from servers to the network room linked to the Microsoft Global Network for data center regions. All data is securely kept within the network, which offers low latency and scalability and the latest advancements in cloud technology with one of the largest interconnected network worldwide. Okay. It used to have a networking infrastructure that has been deployed inside this data center. This is how the networking room, that how it looks like. You can see it's kind of a big set of cables that are connected to the networking devices. They'll have a different routers and the switches. So this is how, you know, the data center, how it looks like. Some computing. Be fine. So this is how the data center looks like. Just want to give you an overview. And if I try to show you, so these are nothing but a regions and the specific availability zones where it has been configured across the world. It is just trying to show us, you know, with the markings, those are available. And it's like a different parts across the globe. Okay. Can see this. If I click on this, Australia Central, Australian Southwest, these are Australian countries. And the Malaysian West, Malaysia. This is in Africa. And Switzerland. We have a different, more availability regions that are in the West countries. West US, South Control ES, Mexico. This is solar energy control. These are by AWS itself. North Central US. These are the countries how it looks like. Okay. It's like a different data center how it's look like. I try to see. This is kind of a top view of the data center how it looks like. They have just tried to give a 3D room. Okay. And it's like perimeter fence, the lobby and the data center and everything they are trying to show up with the information. Like a solar panels for the renewable energy. See, this kind of a lobby how it looks like. It's kind of a 3D view where this global infrastructure it is trying to show up. Okay. You just try to provide us some kind of a lobby view. That's it. Okay. You can see that over the online as well, like the 3D view of the data center of how it looks like. So this is how it looks like and the various regions and the availability zones. Okay. And which is about the global infrastructure, how it is looks like. Okay. And like other cloud vendors in terms of a technology, they have a database services providers and trying to provide storage services, machine learnings, compute services, networking services. We have a different namings, but the backend technology will be same. All right. Now, this Microsoft Azure is famous for, one of the service called Active Directory. Okay. So what is an Active Directory? A directory is an hierarchical architecture structure that stores information about objects on the network. Okay. So Active Directory is nothing but a telephone book. I mean telephone book directory. What happens in the telephone directory? What we have, all the numbers that has been consolidated and trying to store in some particular book or the directory. Correct? It's kind of a location storage. So Active Directory is something, it's kind of a service which will try to store all the information about the domains, users, organizational units, everything. Okay. So it's an Active Directory domain service, provide the method of storing directory data and making this data available to the network users and the administrators. So we have a concept of this Active Directory in WinMSC MCSC certification, right? Windows MCSC certification course, where this will be covered as well as part of a Windows. So this is one kind of a concept on the service or software where we used to install in the servers and manage the user level directory, like a username, the password, the first name and the last name, and all the details that we used to store inside the Active Directory. And we used to create the groups, and we used to have, the particular assignment terms of component organizational units. It's similar like an IAM in the AWS. What in the IAM we used to do? We used to maintain the centralized data access, right? For the users who would like to add it in the cloud access, right? In the same way, what happens? Even in the companies, whoever are joining in that project, we need to provide them and trying to store the data by providing authentication, the credentials and the management, right? That administrative part, which can be done through an Active Directory service. So that's how it is trying to be a one of the famous service actually. So Active Directory domain service, classic on-premise authentication service available since server 2000. That since from that 2000 version server, this is available. 90% plus market penetration, and it provides the forests, domains, organizational units, logical collection and management of objects like a computer management, like the device management, users creations and the groups creations, etc. Okay. It requires a domain controller, physical VM or IaaS VM. That means we need a platform, right? Like a server where this Active Directory has to be installed so that we can be able to manage. So it's kind of a software which will be installed into that particular virtual machine or the physical environment or the physical server. Primary value add is group policy and the local authentication. So we can try to create a various policies as well as the permissions that can be trying to set up. All right. We'll try to understand more on this as well. So we have a different concepts within the Active Directory. So we'll just try to have an overview. Okay. So this kind of a service is the Microsoft proprietary tool. Okay. So AWS has a different concept. For example, you are using IAM and GCP might have a different concept. There might be with a different naming service. But Active Directory is a concept, is a popular one currently that has been the proprietary model from Microsoft actually. So for example, if you are working in a company, right? So whenever you are trying to log in with a computer, it will ask for the username and password, correct? And who will try to create that? The admin of that IT team from that particular company used to give you the laptop and with the credentials assigned. So the domain registration and the credentials configuration, everything will be done by your IT team. So that will usually be done in Active Directory. Okay. So this concept is mostly used to authenticate users and to control the access to the networking resources over the network. For that particular network inside that company, we will be able to share the resources and configure the user management and the domain management. And the server which is running this Active Directory is called a domain controller. Okay, we might have a different domain controllers like a primary domain controller and the backup domain controller. So during logins, users authenticate to the domain controller and the request go to the domain controllers, and then you will granted with an access, okay, based on the defined policies in the backend by the IT team. So if you see, we have these kind of a concepts when you thoroughly trying to work on this Active Directory in future. These are the things that you will see, like a forest, domains, organizations, and the tree and the users. Okay. So if you see, a forest is a logical construct used by Active Directory domain services to group one or more domains. The domains then store objects for users or groups and provide authentication services. When it comes to the domains, in Active Directory terms, a domain is an area of a network organized by a single authentication database. It's kind of a single entity to store all the information in the form of a database. In other words, Active Directory domain is essentially a logical grouping of objects on a network. On that particular network, it will try to collect the organized information in an organized manner with a logical grouping of objects. As I told you, domains are created so that IT teams can have an administrative boundaries between the different network entities. So these Active Directory domains are controlled by a tool called the domain controller. This is the domain controller where we will trying to have all the configurations. Okay, where we will try to have a users, devices informations, all the objects information will be stored over in this domains. Okay, the domain controller acts as a domain authority, meaning it's responsible for all Active Directory object permissions, authentications, modifications, and edits in a domain. So this particular domain control configuration usually be managed by the IT teams in any companies, like authentications. Organizational unit. There is another option is kind of an organizational units. An organizational unit, it will be defined with a short form as OU. It is nothing but a subdivision within an Active Directory into which you can place users, groups, computers, and other organizational units. Okay, it is something, the concept where it will be, you will be able to create users, groups, and other aspects. Okay, like similar to the IAM in the AWS we have seen, right? It's similar kind of a policies where we will be trying to create in a specific organizational unit. Like different projects will have a different organizational units. Like a development organizational unit, they have a different options, right? Like a database team, they have a different organizational unit. Correct? For a different customers, they have a different organizational units. You can create organizational units to mirror your organizational function or the business structure. So based on the business model and the project needs, these organizational units will be created by the admins, the infrastructure admins. Okay, these are the specific concepts, overview of the Active Directory. So before Active Directory, what are the challenges, in general for today's the companies in terms of explosion of apps, devices, and users outside of the corporate network? Okay, outside of the network, in terms of a usage of applications and the device and the user management, and increase in the identity attacks and the lack of visibility and the control in terms of who is trying to access your applications, what kind of a security protocols have been followed. That is one kind of a challenge as well. In terms of a compliance regulations with the data privacy and the security implications, that as the data privacy, the companies used to give us utmost importance, like how secure your data is, and in terms of a security and the compliance specific rules, the data privacy rules. Demands for increased productivity and IT modernizations. Increased productivity means it has to be a centralized hub where all the configuration for authentication and the management of the particular organizational structure, okay, to manage like a centralized structure where it needed to be some kind of a tool which has to overcome all these challenges, right? So that's where this Microsoft Active Directory come into a place as a one kind of a centralized control panel which can connect your workforce to any application. Like you can try to have it integrated with any external applications like a mobile applications, your dynamic applications, your organizational direct domain controller, your servers, and the backend networks. Okay, everywhere this Active Directory is nowadays it's famous. So that's why this is one of the popular model, like a service which has been proprietary by Microsoft and it's been provided by them, where nowadays it's popular as well. So Azure Active Directory, the world's largest cloud identity service, thousands of organizations, millions of active users, and billions of a daily requests. 100K plus enterprise customers using Azure Active Directory. 250 million plus Azure AD monthly active users. 30 billion plus Azure AD daily authentication request. Authentication means whatever the authentication you're trying to have it integrated with any application, the authentication will be managed by this Azure Active Directory. Engineered for availability and the security. So you can see across all data centers, this particular model, like Active Directory model, it can be actually integrated and just available with the different options in terms of an operational security as well. Okay. Robust ecosystem to integrate with your existing tools. Like you can have this Active Directory concept integrated with any third-party existing tools which are in the market. Okay. Microsoft integrates with a wide variety of partners to extend the value of your existing tools, applications, and services with Azure Active Directory. In terms of a business applications, like you might have heard about Adobe, SAP, and Cisco WebEx, right? So, I mean, WebEx is, Cisco is a popular company for networking devices. WebEx is similar like a Zoom application, right? So when you're trying to register your username and password, the backend there should be a directory, right? Like a database. So that database, it can be integrated with Azure Active Directory. HR management tools, okay? And secure hybrid access. So, during these are the famous companies, the products which are being utilized, okay, by the service of this Active Directory. Microsoft Azure Active Directory is the universal platform to manage and secure identities. You can try to connect this Azure Active Directory and configure to workforce to any applications. It protects and governs the access. That means you can try to administrate the access level controls. Engage with the customers and the partners. It accelerates the adoption of your applications. Okay. Azure Active Directory benefits and the features. It's a cloud-based suite for identity management capabilities, which will enable us to securely manage the access to Azure services and resources for users. So whatever the services that you are trying to use in this Azure, Microsoft Azure Cloud Platform, you can try to integrate this Active Directory for authentication purpose as well. Okay. So it is trying to provide the application management authentications, device management, and the hybrid entity. You can see this. There are applications like a Microsoft Office 365 and or if you are trying to launch a server, for example. So what happened? Even if you are trying to have any application access that are being accessed over the on-premise environment, any applications that are actually integrated with a Active Directory configuration within the Azure, you can see users, groups, authentication, authorization that can be integrated with a Windows Active Directory. Okay, so we have a Windows Active Directory and Azure Active Directory. This Azure Active Directory, which will be directly linked to the Azure services within the cloud, Windows Active Directory that you can try to install in the server, and you can try to connect with any other local applications over the physical infrastructure. Okay, these are the various methods that I was trying to provide. Azure Active Directory benefits and features. The key features is nothing but a single sign-on. Single sign-on is something, it's kind of an identity where it will be directly connected to your company's organization's directory. Okay, so it's kind of an identification method that will enable you to log into multiple applications or multiple websites. Okay, that has been provided by your company. If you enable SSO, you don't need to enter username and password every time. It will automatically redirect to the SSO. The SSO will authenticate, and then you can try to log in. For example, the SSO, for example, a good example is a Google applications, like a Gmail you are using. The same credentials you are trying to use for the YouTube, Google Drive, and Google, Analytics and AdSense, right? So it is coming up because of the integration with an SSO. So it's nothing but a signs in only one time, single sign on. So you don't need to log in again and again to the different applications if that has been configured. Okay. And the benefits, again, one more is self-service password change. You will be able to control your password authentication, and you will be able to control the multi-factor authentication configurations. Active Directory join for Windows 10. Like if you have a Windows 10 software, then you have an option called AD join. That is one kind of a service which is provided. So AD join is something, what happens, it will try to help in the trying to manage the corporate owned devices. Like it will try to directly link to the Active Directory. Okay. And the company branding as well, which we'll be able to configure anyway. So we have a different, the aspects like identity, account, Azure AD account, Azure AD tenant directory, Azure subscription. So identity is nothing but an object that can be authenticated. Account is something, identity that has a data associated with it. Okay. So this is nothing but Azure AD, that is instance of an Azure AD. A tenant is automatically created when your organization signs up for a Microsoft Cloud Service subscription. These are kind of a different terms if you try to, look into the specific aspects. The subscription which you are seeing in Azure is nothing but used to pay as you go. That means whatever the services you are trying to use, that you can try to use it for the cloud services as like a pay as you go service. Okay. So compare AD's DS to the Azure Active Directories. So these are the comparison between the normal AD to the Active Directory AD. So, this is not that quite relevant that we can try to discuss, but you can try to have a look. All right. When you are trying to have an understanding on real-time projects, you'll be able to understand this as well. So these are kind of features, okay, which you will be able to see when you are trying to compare with different services. Like what are the free services, what you'll be getting to use with the Microsoft 365 applications, premium plans. All right. These are kind of a collaboration features that are available. As I told you, we will be able to create users and groups inside this Active Directory, correct? So you can see how it looks like. And the mandate that what is trying to give is all users must have an account. So if a user is to be created, they should be having an account. The account is used for authentication and authorization. Each user account has an additional properties. Okay, you can try to configure like what kind of a permissions you want to assign, what kind of a properties, all kind of a setup you will be able to do here. Okay. So these are the, will just show you in the practical lab how these users can be created. Must be a, when you are trying to create a user, it must be a global administrator or user administrator to manage users. So whoever is trying to create a user, they must be the global administrator to manage the users. Okay. And use profile picture or the job or the contact information while creating the profile. And deleted users can be restored. Whenever user is created, if you want to delete some particular specific users, those can be restored after, within these 30 days itself. And sign in and audit log information, like what time the user is created, when he's trying to log into applications, such kind of information that will be available over this particular console. All right. So we can try to create a different groups, like a managers group, administrator groups, or guest users group, some kind of a groups that can be created as well, where we can try to have it assigned. You can see there are different permissions assigned for this group specific as well. So what we're gonna do, I'll just show you how the console for the Azure it looks like, and we'll try to see a overview on how it will be working as well. So there should be a website, portal.azure.com. I'll just try to click on sign in. See, I'm able to log in. This is the one which I've just tried to register my account within this particular Azure cloud environment. This is how the console for this Azure cloud console, how it looks like. You can see it is quite different when you try to compare with AWS as well. This is how it looks like. We have a different services, you can see. Dashboard. Services. When I'm clicking on all services, you can see it is trying to provide the different services, like machine learning services, analytical services, compute services, where you can try to launch servers and configure the virtual machines with the different operating systems. Okay. Container services, database services, DevOps services, and generic services, hybrid multi-cloud, identity, integrations, IoT services, management and governance, migration services, and the monitoring tool services. You can see this. Networking services here, and the security and the storage, and the web and mobile applications. So it has a different services when we are trying to compare with the AWS cloud, right? So for example, we'll just try to see an overview of one of the compute services, for example. If I have to launch some specific virtual server inside this virtual compute, let me try to show you. I'll go to the home. For example, you can see, I'll try to click on the virtual machines. Okay. I don't have any virtual machine. You can try to create a similar virtual machines like how you try to do in the AWS as well. Even it had a free tier charges, and after that you need to pay the amount, like a pay as you go service. So currently my subscription should be I think my free subscription got ended. So whatever the services which I'm trying to use, it depends on the pricing level itself. Okay. So for example, if I need to create a virtual machine, you can see Azure virtual machine creates a virtual machine hosted by Azure here. So subscription, like I have a Azure subscription by default, resource group. A resource group is a collection of resources that share the same lifecycle permission policies. If you want to create, you can try to create a new one. I'm just already created a compute, for example. If you want to create a new one, you just need to give a name and trying to use that across. I just try to create a resource group like a compute. Okay. I'll try to have a virtual machine name like a demo Linux server. It shouldn't have a spaces. So I'll just put an hyphen. It should be fine. Region, as I told you, we have a different regions like similar like to AWS. You can try to select anything you want. I'm trying to use it. Okay. East Asia, for example. And availability zone. So I'm just going with the default settings. I'm not selecting anything which I would like to set up. So we have a different zones inside East Asia. So I'm trying to use anything you can try to use. For example, I'm using a zone one. Okay. Security types. It's kind of a security groups, right? What we used to see. Trust launch virtual machines. So I'm trying to go with the default settings. And here you can try to choose a different image. Like in the AWS, we have an AMI concept, right? Amazon Mission Image. Here we have a different, for example, I'm trying to use Red Hat Linux Enterprise. Okay. I'm trying to click on that. Architecture is 64 and size standard 1 core CPU and 3.5 GB memory. It will charge around 6,134 rupees per month if it is trying to be run, continuously. We have a different as well. I think it got choose a basic one core 3.5 GB RAM. That's fine. So this should be the basic one, right? Even we have this one core 0.5 GB. We'll go with the least price one because my free series free tier got ended. So it had 1 core CPU, 0.5 GB RAM, 2 disk, and it will charge 418 rupees per month. Okay. I'll select this for demo purpose. And then I'll just try to create a username here. So use an existing key pair. I don't have anything. Should I have? I just use it. Yes, use existing key stored inside the Azure. I have already a key pair which is already there. I'm just trying to use this. And the ports which is already there, like SSH port, I'm trying to enable as it's a Linux machine. Okay. These are kind of a selection where we used to launch inside the Azure. I'm clicking on next. I don't have any storage. So I'll go with the default image. Disk type is 64 GB and standard. Just go with the standard SSD. I don't have anything. Okay, let's keep it. It is asking to attach any additional disk. For example, I'm trying to create and attach a new disk. Demo Linux. 1024 GB Okay. None empty disk. Just go back. Click on OK. I'll just delete it. Let's see. Later, if it asks, we'll try to attach a storage for it. I'm just going with the default settings. Clicking on next network. There is a default VPC, I mean network, which is created that we are calling as a VNet, virtual net inside the Azure concept. I have a default. Under this particular network, submit, this server will be launched. So I'll go with the basic security group, which is with the SSH port is there. Allowed security ports. All right. I'm just trying to click on delete public IP and the NIC network interface. Once the virtual server got deleted, I'm just clicking on this enable option. I don't need a load balancer. So next, management. It shouldn't be need review plus create. So I'm trying to launch a sample server. I just want to show you, that's it. So this is the prices usually, okay? 0.5733 Indian rupees. I'm clicking on create. Let's see. It is kind of a different cloud vendor, different cloud console where we are trying to launch a virtual server, okay? So deployment is in progress. Let's wait for it to be launched. It says your deployment is complete. So you can see, go to resource. Okay, I'm just going to the resource over there. I just created a demo Linux server, right? So you can see it has a different view like networking IP address and the size 1 core 0.5 GB and the disk security groups and the monitoring. And it's like a similar, it's a different console with a different UI, okay, interface. Let me try to connect the server. Connect. It should open a command line interface like a shell. I'll click on select. So I'll click on connect. Connect from your local machine. I'm connecting. So prerequisites could not be configured. Change the port of connecting the virtual machine on the connect page of the virtual machine. Public IP, it's there. It says some port issues. Now if I go back here, checking access. It is accessible. Okay. So I'm able to connect from the PuTTY tool from my computer. You can see Azure user demo Linux server. Okay. I can log in and try to perform the actions. You can see this sudo su yum install httpd. So this is a server where I'm trying to launch Azure user. Okay. 20.2.19.251 where I try to launch here. Right. This is the public IP. Okay. I can try to install and trying to work and try to work on my virtual server as well. It's installing all the softwares, whatever. So I just want to show you how these can be launched. That's it. So I'm just trying to perform basic queries. That's it. Yeah. Update -y. And you can try to launch the Windows servers as well. Okay. cd space /root. So just want to show you. And if you want, you can try to launch a Windows server as well in this way and execute any Linux commands. Okay. As we are done, I'll just go and try to terminate the server. Like now I'll just show you how it can be. I'll go back to the demo Linux server here. More options. Virtual machines. I'll click on this. Then I'll just try to delete this. Okay. You can see start, stop, and restart. And I can try to delete the server as well. Demo Linux. You want to delete this? Yes. Enter delete. Delete. Stop. No virtual machines. So I have a virtual private IP, so that will be still there. So my compute resource is still there. So I don't have any servers for now. So SH key and network is still there, so I can keep that. Okay. So in this way, I'll be able to use these compute services as well. And for example, if I want to work on some kind of an Active Directory, okay, for example, configuration of, I want to create any specific user here. I just try to type Active Directory, for example. Windows Azure Active Directory. This should be See, there is a user section. There is a user which I've already have it. For example, I'm the administrator here, right? With the identity as Microsoft. And if I want to create a new user, for example, I can try to create new user. Okay. And I can try to give a different name. Principal name. So I'm just trying to create a sample user with a password assigned, for example. Just let me try to create. And while I'm creating, it will be asking a different, identities like the first name, last name, user type, the job related information and the contact related information, the controls and everything. Okay. And if you want to have and assign to any specific group, you can try to do that. If you want to attach any role, you can try to do that as well. If you try to create, you can see required information is missing. So actually this email is not existing, right? So if you can try to create an email and then attach to this particular username, this will be created. Okay, I doesn't have a proper email because I have only one email ID that has been linked to this account. So I'm just trying to link it, but I just want to show you how this can be done. Okay, you can try to create a group as well with the group details on which group it is product of. For example, a development group, database project group, networking group, all such kind of an administrator group, power group, and the guest group. You can try to create that. Okay, it doesn't have any groups for now, so just want to show you how it can be done. If you want to assign some particular specific roles, what is a role? Like you can try to assign the specific set of permissions. For example, he's an administrator, you want to do it, application developer role, payload author, assignment reader. Reader means you'll have a read access. Okay, log reader, it will try to read audit logs to custom security attributes. Billing administrator, compliance administrator. We have a different roles that you can try to assign to the specific groups as well. This is how we can try to use this role section. Okay. Windows 360 admin. If you try to assign this role, he can provision and manage all aspects of cloud PCs. You see in the IAM concept what we discuss in AWS, in the similar way, the users, the groups, it will have a different attributes and the requirements where you can try to assign to particular users as well. Okay. You can try to add them. And then if you try to create, it will be created. We don't have demo user. Next is a guest user. I'm trying to give it as, click on next assignments, review and create. Say I'm trying to create this user. Okay. Cloud demo user. Successfully created the user. If I try to refresh, will take some time to create. We have an option called audit logs that will try to display if any activities that has been done since last days. Okay. Where you can try to download as well. Sign in logs means whatever the user activities that you will be able to create, all the information that will be trying to show up. You can see when did you log in, from which location you try to do it, and what IP address it's part of. You can see this is kind of a sign in logs information. Here we have an options to password reset and the deleted users informations what we have seen here, it will try to show up as well. You can see a new user is created with it's a the member is a my account and the guest user is the one which I've created now. When I'm opening this, you will have a different information for this specific user. Actually, you have a properties, whatever the data that you supplied. I didn't have anything like a mail, contact number, and the details, but you can try to have all these configurations which can be done. Okay, so in this way, this particular Active Directory section will be useful. Okay, I'll just go and delete this as we should be okay now. User successfully deleted. It just takes some time. Okay, that should be done. So this is how the Active Directory will be looking, and the overview on the Azure Cloud Console. Okay, we have a different services as well. It depends, like company to company and the project level requirements. The companies will try to choose the different cloud vendors based on their contractual agreements and the cost effective solutions and the type of services they try to offer to the clients. Okay, that's it for the introduction on the cloud Azure. Any doubts on the theoretical understanding of introduction of Azure? Any doubts? So the next cloud vendor, we'll have a Google Cloud vendor, right? It's one of the popular model again. So even we'll try to have an overview on general overview on how it will be, what kind of a service. It's also one of the popular model along with AWS, Amazon, and Microsoft Azure. Okay. So this is the introduction for the Google Cloud. So we are calling them as GCP. Okay. So even it does have a free trial for up to some period of a time, and it's one of the popular model in current market. Okay. So as we already know, the Google is a famous as well. So it has a different products, and it's also coming in to provide the cloud computing platform to the customers. Okay. With the same infrastructure and the platform where Google services, like which are already being implemented, like a Gmail, YouTube, and the adverbs and Drive and etc. Right? Different. Correct. So this GCP Google Cloud Platform launched on April 7, 2008. Okay. And the complete set of services on the platform which were written at that time is in C++, Python, Java, and Ruby. We're offering a number of resources with a different ways to access those resources. Okay. So these are the cloud platforms which are already in place, which are kind of the famous companies. We are then trying to use the Google Cloud Platform as a fixed vendor. You can see like a Best Buy, CloudLock, Gia, Pulse, Ubisoft, or Gaming, Redbus. Okay. And CloudLock. So these are kind of a companies which they are trying to use it nowadays, and they are also trying to offer different services. As you can see, they are trying to offer a compute services, storage services, network services, big data services, and the services. You can see the DNS, cloud endpoint, trial, predictions, compute engine, app engine. This Google Cloud Platform is famous for the Google App Engine. It's kind of a service which will be mostly used by the developers. Okay, like a compute services where we can try to virtual servers, like a storage services where you can try to store the data, networking services. We can try to create a virtual networks and analytical tools, the big data, and the DNS domain registration services as well. And here as well, the Google Cloud, it's been deployed under 36 regions across the globe for these data centers. And they have 109 registered zones currently and 176 network edge locations. It is available in 200 plus countries and the territories. Okay. As I told you, the Google is famous for is the cloud engine, cloud app engine. So it will allow users to actually trying to work on the code level. Okay, it's a one of the popular service where developers can try to have this platform and trying to develop the applications. So what actually happens by within this usage of this platform, we can try to host a web applications in a Google managed data centers. Okay, which will be helpful for users to developers, like application developers and front end developers. We can try to build a scalable web and mobile applications in any programming languages. So that kind of a service where Google is trying to provide as well. Okay, so Google App Engine, it's a managed, scalable and reliable cost efficient tool which has been offered. So it will be used mostly to run the web applications that we can try to use the Google as a cloud platform and we can try to deploy. So what happens here? This app engine, it makes the developers to easily develop and scalable and high performance web applications. Okay. With a web applications like a Google applications that we can try to scale up and down based on the responses in the shifting demands. Okay, like you can try to have a task communications and a data stores work use, and we have a in-memory caches, some kind of a services it will be available. So this is kind of a, this app engine provides, software development kit facilitates, right? It's kind of an app engine SDK. It will help you in emulating the production runtime environment and allowing the developers to design and test applications in their own PCs. So when the application is finished being produced, once it is developers, and developers can quickly migrate it to the application engine as well. The developed application, it can try to migrate in the application engine, the Google App Engine. So based on the cost that is generated, like you can try to use a different coding languages like a Python, Java, Go, C++, all these languages that are currently supported. So that's why we are calling this as a platform as a service. Okay, for the cloud computing term, we are calling as a platform as a service. You can start creating almost immediately, different applications after receiving the software development kit. And then you can access immediately the Google application developers manual, which you can try to choose based on the required language what you would like to build up the application. Okay, it will trying to create a runtime environment. That's why we are calling as a platform as a service. Okay. So we have a different features for this particular Google Cloud in terms of a data storage, retrieval, and the search engine based, and in the terms of a communications, in terms of a process management, in terms of a computations like a virtual server applications and app configuration and the management. It's kind of a general features of this Google Cloud platform. And billing status, if you see, we have a different billing options like a billing status and a billing administrator access, daily usage statistics and the cost, making the payments and the current balance and monthly transactions, and try it's kind of an overview of the usage of the app engine that you would like to have it configurations. Google compute engine machine types determine the physical specifications of your machine, such as the amount of memory, virtual cores, and the persistent disk limits an instance will have. All machine types are currently managed by the Google compute engine. So here the machine types are divided into different classes. Like we have a T2.micro, M series, M series, R series, right? In the AWS, we have a different kind of a series inside this Google Cloud as well, like a standard machine servers, high CPU memories, machine servers, high memory machine servers, small machine types. These are a different specifications that has been given over here. Okay, for launching a server, we can try to choose that. Okay. So as I told you, it is trying to provide us services for the database as well, like a cloud SQL, cloud data store, compute engine, cloud storage, and analytical BigQuery tools, and the application engine, which we know it's kind of a platform as a service. This is kind of a Google services that has been offered over the cloud. And what is a cloud SQL? Cloud SQL is something, what we have discussed, right, in during the database services in Amazon, like MySQL, store and manage data using a fully managed relational MySQL database. Google handles the replication, patch management, and database management to ensure the availability and the performance. Okay, this is nothing but a cloud SQL. It is also the SQL which is available in the Google Cloud Platform with a familiar infrastructure, flexible charging on whatever the time and how much time you've been trying to use the resources. In terms of a security, availability, and durability, this will be a beneficial one. This database can be providing the migration services and with the controlled access and the fully managed services. Okay. In terms of a storage, uses a durable and highly available object storage services. Within the global edge caching, users have a fast access to the application's data from any locations or any regions or any zones. So in terms of advantages, you can see the secure and safe, competitive and the flexible pricing, where the pricing models will be different. It will be different for the different cloud vendors. Object-based storage with a fully featured APIs, flexible access, and you can try to access quick. Okay. These are about the storage level. And data store. Again, it comes into the database level. It uses a managed NoSQL schemaless database. As you know that we have discussed yesterday, right? NoSQL schemaless database, like a unstructured data. So such kind of a database being supported over here for storing a non-relational data. So cloud data store automatically scales as you need it and supports transaction as well. Scale it means whenever the data is high, for the dynamic applications with the high level of a data, the data will be scaling up and down. Whenever there's a storage is less, when the incoming traffic is less for the data, then it will try to scale down. Okay. That's what we are calling as a scaling and scale down. Schemaless access with SQL like querying, managed database, auto scale with your users, transactions based, built-in redundancy, local development tools, and access your data from anywhere. These are the features for this cloud data store services within this Google Cloud Platform. Okay. In terms of a networking concepts, Google's networking technology helps provide faster and consistent performance for your applications and the services. It had a load balancing concepts like a HTTP configurations, networking, TCP and UDP. Like you can try to have a load balancer concepts with the help of a ports like a HTTP ports and the network level ports. We can try to have a direct peering and VPN connections, which can be configured within the cloud. We can try to have a DNS configurations in this particular network section as well. Okay. So data flow alpha. Build, deploy, and run data processing pipelines that scale to solve your key business challenges. Google Cloud Dataflow enables reliable execution for large-scale data processing scenarios such as ETL tools, like an extract, transform, and load. Like, whoever is working on some kind of analytical tools or the projects, they are trying to provide such kind of an alpha data flow tools here. Real-time computation and process organization. These are kind of a different features. Okay. By providing a unified programming model, managed scaling, reliable and consistent processing, built in for the cloud and the monitoring level. These are for an analytical services they are trying to offer us. And cloud pub or sub preview, connect your services with a reliable many-to-many asynchronous messages hosted on the Google infrastructure. So it will automatically scales as you need it and provides a foundation, your own robust global services. Okay. So messaging services as well being offered over the Google Cloud Platform, providing a reliable and real-time messaging services. Flexible to embrace the change. designed for Google scale and designed for a faster data. So these are kind of a different services which are being offered over here. So we just want to have an overview on this Google Cloud as well. Okay. So if you ask me the difference between AWS, Azure, and the Google Cloud, okay, it depends on the technologies they try to have, the type of services and the pricing factors, which will be, gauged and trying to be used by different organizations. Okay, in terms of the beginning of this cloud, it will be started, 11 years ago. It's by Amazon earlier. Microsoft and Google Cloud, it's around 5 to 6 years old. Okay. So depending on the company's requirement, the contractual agreement, these cloud environments will be chosen. Okay. We cannot conclude this is better or that was, better. It depends on, there are some type of services which are actually famous in particular cloud vendors. All right. So when it comes to the AWS provides most services from networks to robotics, automations, AIs, it's like a most of the mature services that they are trying to have, best considered as the best reliability and security wise, more computational capacity compared to the Azure and GCP. When it comes to the Azure, it provides integrations and migration of Microsoft services like Active Directory we have discussed, right? That is a famous one. And many options are accessible in Azure, like AI, machine learning, and analytical services in Azure services. So here in Azure, most of the services are less expensive when compared to AWS and Google Cloud Platform. Okay. When it comes to the Google Cloud, it works well for the other Google services and the products. And it is a famous for Google Platform Engine. Okay. And it provides a good containerized workload supports. Okay. But this Google Cloud Platform has a limited services compared to AWS and Azure. All right. So different vendors, different services, it depending on the project requirements and how they try to choose. Like based on the contractual agreements, they'll try to choose the vendors. Okay, that's how it works. So till now we have completed on the overview of the computing services and different modules in AWS and overview of Azure and the Google Cloud. So further classes will be trying to see the overview of DevOps, how it will be, the introduction, and we'll try to have a sample cloud DevOps tools, and we'll try to deploy some kind of a developments applications inside the cloud environment as well. Okay. So as per info, I think 25th Christmas is a holiday, right? So from tomorrow we'll be having a 2.5 hour session rather than 2 hours every day. We'll be having 2.5 hour session so that it will be finished, I think around Tuesday, right? I think, yeah, Wednesday it should be finished. Okay, we have only 4 days, right? So we'll be trying to finish our session till 27th. Okay, that's how. All right, I'm done with today session. I hope you got an awareness and understanding on different cloud vendors. Any doubts, guys? So from tomorrow we'll have a 2.5 hour session, like till 7 to 9:30 around. We'll be trying to finish it off. Okay, because Christmas is a holiday, right? So we have a timing deadline till 27th of December. So if you have an additional half an hour in all these 4 days, we'll be covering an additional day. So we have a total 4 days left now. So from tomorrow, we'll be going with a DevOps introduction as well. Okay. All right. Any doubts you can ask in the Zoom chat.
Yeah, okay, guys. Hope you enjoy the session. So, is there any queries? So, let me know in the chat box. I will try to address it. And I'm sharing the feedback link in the chat box. So, make sure you're attendant. And somebody asking about certificate. Yeah, whoever having a 60% attendance, so they will get the certificate definitely. Rashid is asking, can I submit feedback response from library? So which library you are asking in LMS you're talking about? From YouTube, Swapnil Patre. Sir, I have a problem for SDP. Can you please tell me your problem? Adira is asking, will the certificate be sent through email? Yes, Adira. Via email you will get. Yeah, in LMS also you can mark your attendance, Rashid. Okay, I hope there is no more questions. Yeah, we'll done today. So we'll meet on tomorrow, same time. Okay. Up to then, take care. Good night, everybody. Bye bye.